In a previous video, I discussed the incredible benefits of the OMAD plan for improving quality of life and performance. While you enjoyed the content, some shared that they're having struggles adapting it. Being one of the first to advocate OMAD as a complete self-transformation tool, I decided to address these struggles as they seem rooted in confusion. Summarizing your comments, I will cover things like brain fog, low energy, shakiness during fasts, fasting-mimicking diets, whether OMAD is restrictive, and fasting in the occult. For those new to my work, I go by the name of POTB. I discuss esotericism and practical methods for unlocking human potential, creativity, focus, and self-mastery. Stick around if that sounds interesting, and if you need magic manuals or diagrams or struggle with hunger, body weight, or discipline, check my books and digital stores. You'll likely find something useful. OMAD and side effects. Since they have the same root cause, I'll cover the first three issues together: brain fog, low energy, and shakiness during fasting. The reason you get this when attempting the OMAD plan is that you are not adapted. Simple as that. Similar to bodybuilding, magic, starting a business, and basically everything worthwhile, the OMAD plan requires a substantial preliminary investment. It includes 1. Giving your body enough time to gradually adapt, and 2. Not pushing through willpower as that equals failure. Strictly individualized, the process depends on how much you're addicted to frequent eating and carbs. For most people, that's actually quite a lot. For me, it took a total of 1 year. The first half was 2 meals per day in 8-16. The second was compressing the feeding window and basically merging the meals into a big dinner, like Serge Nubret, who actually inspired me to do OMAD. The basics of OMAD. As reiterated in my book OMAD Gains, eating OMAD mainly boils down to 3 things, neglecting either of which means suffering. I suggest taking that very seriously. Stable blood sugar, no hunger or cravings whatsoever, and burning stored energy as primary fuel source. So let's dive into each. Quality over quantity. Based on research and personal experience, a zero-carb total elimination diet is the most effective way to get all 3. The comments mention high protein and high fat, but that actually means nothing, as food quality creates all the difference, either making or breaking your success. A diet can be high fat and high protein, but cause cravings and issues due to food intolerances you don't even know about. This is why the mentioned regimen is so effective, even if you cannot afford grass-finished. The complete amino and fatty acid profiles promote high energy, stable mood, mental clarity, long-lasting satiety, optimal hormonal balance, etc. Furthermore, quality fats and proteins crank up the production of the critical satiety signals PYY or peptide YY and CCK cholecystokinin. When injected with these, people might stop eating as they basically signal their brains to do so. Even better, you don't need to inject them as eating high-quality fats and proteins produces identical results. You can research that on your own. Macronutrients and common sense. According to many, this is the most sense-making diet for humans as we have essential amino and fatty acids, but there are no essential sugars. And when it comes to mental states and performance, the human brain is actually made of nearly 70% fat, so you can decide for yourself. Stored energy. Speaking of this, the carbohydrates our bodies can store are actually very limited. Probably a little over 400 grams if you're really jacked and tall or a pro bodybuilder like an IFBB pro or something. Conversely, the average human carries about 40,000 calories of stored fat, an amount lasting for about a month of plain fasting. The bad news is that, thanks to modern living, people train their bodies to be great at burning recently ingested sugars while terrible at accessing their body's reserves. Besides causing permanent hunger, this keeps you in the quote-unquote feedback loop from hell we call a blood sugar roller coaster. Fat burning. To the rescue comes the steaks and eggs diet again. Even when good quality, vegetable oils are quite different. On the contrary, animal fats are the closest to your body's reserves. Plain common sense. Becoming efficient at burning animal fat trains you to access the stored energy, and the more that happens, the more you transition to OMAD. It just becomes natural as you simply don't want to eat. This is largely due to a state called ketosis, which is kind of the backbone of eating OMAD as it provides the earlier mentioned essentials. So let's get into that. Ketones. There are 3 types of ketone bodies: acetone in bread, aceroacetate in urine, and beta-hydroxybutyrate or BHB in blood. The first to get excreted, whereas the third is burned for fuel. The key detail is that the more efficient your body gets at this, the less hunger you experience and the more stable your blood sugar is. The shakiness, nausea, anxiety, and poor energy step back to mental clarity, peak performance, and dramatic physique improvements for those into bodybuilding. Usually the levels slightly drop and then remain steady throughout the fast. This is because the body simply no longer relies on sugar. For the past 10 years, mine remained mainly between 4.1 and 4.3. Let me know about you. Fasting-Mimicking Diets. Much of OMAD's power comes from controlling insulin. While OMAD Gains covers that extensively, broken insulin is the root cause of the obesity pandemic. As covered in previous videos, insulin and glucagon are a lot like Hesed and Gebora, or even yin and yang, according to Duke National University's Ben Bickman. The bottom line is that one builds, expands, and develops, whereas the other destroys, burns, and eliminates. Fasting triggers glucagon, the metabolic Gebora, whereas eating or calories insulin, the metabolic Hesed. A quote-unquote fasting-mimicking diet is supposed to keep insulin maximally low, as plain fasting is presumably the lowest. So let's get back to macronutrients. The reality is that different macronutrients spike blood sugar and thus insulin differently. Fats are the lowest, carbs are the highest, and protein is in the middle. This is why there's an argument that bulletproof coffee is the ultimate fasting-mimicking tool. On the contrary, demonizing protein is quite dangerous, especially for athletes. There's also the argument that when combined together in a meal, different macronutrients reduce the meal's glycemic index and therefore the blood sugar and insulin response. Given all this, meats and eggs remain unbeatable for fasting mimicking with whole foods and thriving physically and mentally. Plus, if you really dedicate the time to actually adapt, you'll never need butter in your coffee. Hands down. Water and minerals. As far as other ways to combat the mentioned side effects, do your homework on proper hydration, electrolyte balance, water excretion during adaptation, etc. OMAD and restrictions. The comments mention restrictions, and honestly, I don't know what your guy's doing. Anyone who has ever adapted to the OMAD plan agrees that this is the most liberating eating pattern, as they finally get to feast epically daily. According to Mark Sisson, the challenge of OMAD is not eating less, but getting enough food. How cool is that? Well, actually plenty, and here's why. Reaching absolute satiety with the right foods further stimulates the release of CCK and PYY, so you can fast even longer. Kabbalistically, I view this as a pact with the nefesh, or animal soul, which for those not knowing includes the inner child, the Freudian id, the Jungian shadow, and all your basic instincts, urges, and desires. During the day there is no hunger whatsoever, so the nefesh is out of the way, and delaying gratification comes naturally. You crush your tasks, hit the weights, etc. At night, the nefesh gets its part of the deal. What some people fail to understand is that delaying doesn't mean denying gratification. Think of moderation and Seneca. The even cooler is that if you're really adapted, you can actually skip the whole day and basically do a 48-hour fast, like many others. And if you listen to your body, you'll likely find eating OMAD as a dinner more natural. Besides letting you focus on what's meaningful, this aligns you with your true nature. And here's why. Our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. They hunted throughout the day and feasted at night, which wasn't necessarily every day or every night, as there wasn't always food. According to some, this feeding pattern is actually deeply engraved in the collective, as it basically preserved our race in ancient times. Hence, why you always tend to have more appetite at night. And now, let's talk calories. Calories. Whenever I tracked calories in the past, I felt miserably, never having abs or real muscle, struggling to get rid of my tits. Fully adapting to the OMAD plan felt like removing a mental leash, an obnoxious restriction, causing me real, yet unnecessary suffering. It was as if my nefesh told me, since I get what I want consistently, I'll let you stay lean and mean year round. Let me know if that resonates. Incredibly liberating, this made me enjoy the iron lifestyle to the fullest. And for the record, I actually diet cycle, keeping high metabolic flexibility, which is another discussion. Let me know your thoughts. Fasting and the occult. Mentioning ancient times, fasting was utilized by various systems and occultists, yet as far as I know, that wasn't eating only carbs, which, as you learned, is actually the complete opposite. Examples include the Abramelin operation and Count Cagliostro, who is the inventor of the Egyptian rite. While the first includes pretty intense fasting, the second utilized fasting alongside other sensory deprivation methods like a true biohacker. And in the words of Gurdjieff, by itself fasting has no meaning. Fasting is used as a means of altering our metabolism and consequently altering the tempo of life and movement in us. Fasting is not for the sake of somebody, nor in honor of any saint. Fasting is without exception for oneself. Nowadays fasts are usually undertaken in various religions, without meaning, without consciousness. Such fasting is of no use, and to fast in this way, one must be a fool. As far as quote-unquote mystics who ate nothing but carbs, the reality is that these people were extremely naive and ignorant of many things, which is kind of mentioned in Living Telema. You cannot blame them, as the church wrote and science wasn't developed. Throughout history, humans, especially such mystics and religious people, believed a lot of stupid things. Examples include the earth being flat and the sun dying every night, which is actually the backbone of the old magical formula. According to Crowley, the new era started in 1904. In the 1920s, insulin was discovered, yet lobbyists paid Harvard researchers to hide it. Now we live in the information age, so it's about investing our attention wisely, availing of and finding mystery in the latest scientific discoveries. Think of Hesed and Gebura and insulin and glucagon. As haiku poet and Zen master Matsuo Basho advocates, seek not the paths of the ancients, seek that which the ancients sought. So pay attention to the right information and use the tools available to carve your own future. But that's just my opinion. Let me know if you agree, consider my products and books, subscribe, and thank you for your time.